Never expected that a simple refusal would turn into such a mess. It all started when Jamie, my sister, planned a perfect baby moon. But the moment I refused to babysit for her, everything changed drastically. She sent me an angry text, calling me selfish, and then demanded that I reimburse her for the canceled trip. But it didn't stop there. She also sent me a long list of expensive baby items that I was expected to buy for her child. A few days ago, Jamie texted me with what seemed like a simple request, but had the potential to create a massive headache. She wanted me to watch her kids for a few days so she and her husband, Daniel, could enjoy a baby moon. She framed it as a special opportunity to show family love. I refused immediately, not because I hate kids, not because I don't want to help, but simply because I have no obligation to take on her responsibilities. Instead of accepting my decision, Jamie lost it. She flooded me with messages, calling me selfish and claiming I didn't care about family. She accused me of ruining her baby moon, even though she had never even asked me before booking the trip. I stayed calm and explained that I couldn't help, but Jamie refused to listen. Message after message, her anger escalated, and soon I was the villain in her narrative. She told me I didn't understand a mother's sacrifices and that I should take more responsibility for my family. Her words became increasingly sharp and cutting, as if saying no was some kind of unforgivable crime. I tried ignoring her, but Jamie switched tactics. Instead of just blaming me, she suddenly played the victim, saying the trip was canceled and she couldn't get a full refund. Then came the shocking demand. She expected me to compensate her for the money she had lost. I couldn't believe what I was reading, but it got worse. Jamie didn't just want a refund. She wanted me to pay for an entire Disney vacation for her, Daniel, and their kids. And as if that wasn't enough, she sent me a shopping list of expensive baby items she expected me to buy, including premium Japanese diapers. She insisted they were the best and that I should buy a few packs to help her prepare. Luxury baby clothes. Not basic ones, but designer outfits that cost way more than normal baby clothes. Mini Asics sneakers for a newborn. Why would a baby need expensive running shoes? Toys and baby accessories. The total, around $500. She even had the nerve to add, "If you feel bad for ruining my trip, this is how you can make it right. Just click purchase, and I'll forgive you." I stared at my phone, in complete shock. How did this suddenly become my responsibility? Just because I didn't want to be her free babysitter, now I was expected to pay for her irresponsibility? I decided not to engage. I blocked Jamie. But I was too naive to think that was the end of it. Because right after that, Daniel called me. I saw the call come through but refused to answer. Then, later that night, Jamie showed up at my door, and she didn't come alone. Standing next to her was her 11-year-old daughter, Melanie, with a small suitcase beside her. No text, no explanation. Jamie had abandoned her daughter on my doorstep. I stood frozen, staring in disbelief. Had she really just done this? After I refused Jamie's request, she didn't just stay angry. She escalated the situation to an unbelievable level. Instead of understanding that I simply couldn't help, she blamed me entirely and demanded compensation for ruining her trip. She wasn't just asking for a small refund. She expected me to cover a significant amount of money for what she claimed were her losses. I was completely shocked. She even demanded that I fund an entire Disney trip for herself, Daniel, and their 3 kids. Jamie bombarded me with messages, each one more absurd than the last. This trip means everything to my family. I've always dreamed of taking my kids to Disney just once in my life. You ruined my plans, so I think it's time for you to do the right thing. That's what she kept saying, but I couldn't help but feel she was blatantly exploiting me. She didn't just want a refund, she was treating me like some kind of savior for her personal financial failures. But she didn't stop there. She started sending shopping links to ridiculously expensive baby products, premium Japanese diapers, designer baby clothes, and other luxury items. I had to admit some of the things on her list cost hundreds of dollars, but they weren't things I would ever buy without a legitimate reason. Jamie insisted that I needed to purchase all of it because, according to her, they were essential for her baby and a way for me to make up for refusing to help her. I felt completely overwhelmed as I looked at her list. Every item was unnecessarily expensive, like mini Asics sneakers for a newborn. And then she sent me a bizarre message. "Don't you want to help your family? These things are very important." I was baffled. I had always believed that each family should take care of their own needs, and I certainly didn't feel obligated to fund someone else's luxury purchases. When I didn't reply, Jamie refused to back down. Instead of accepting my refusal, she pushed even harder. She not only wanted a refund for her trip, but still insisted that I pay for the entire Disney vacation. She claimed this was her only chance to take the trip, and that I was responsible for making it happen. But honestly, who did she think I was? Some kind of personal bank for her family? Every time I thought the situation had finally settled down, Jamie would send me another emotionally charged message, talking about how she had counted on me as the only family member who truly cared. She even had the audacity to say, "If you don't help, you'll be the reason my family suffers. You don't even deserve to be my sister." At that point, I was physically and mentally drained. She clearly had no respect for boundaries and was completely taking advantage of my kindness. I decided not to respond anymore. Blocking her felt like I was cutting off a major source of stress. But before long, she sent one final message, one that I never expected. Jamie demanded that I reimburse her for all the money she had supposedly lost and fully fund the Disney trip. And then she threatened me. If I didn't comply, I would be responsible for the failure of her plans. I couldn't take it anymore. I blocked her completely. But I had no idea that this wasn't the end of it. I thought that after blocking Jamie, everything would finally be over. But I was wrong. Before I could even breathe a sigh of relief, she'd already sent me another long-winded message, listing all the things I needed to buy to make up for my mistake. But it wasn't just a random shopping list. It was a collection of luxury baby products, each outrageously expensive. Jamie included multiple links to high-end baby items, such as premium Japanese diapers. She insisted these were the best and that I should buy a few packs to help her prepare. Designer baby clothes. Not just regular baby outfits, but high-end luxury brands, each set costing several times more than normal baby clothes. Mini Asics sneakers for a newborn. Why would a baby need expensive running shoes? Toys and baby care accessories. The total? $500. She even included a message. "If you feel bad for ruining my trip, this is how you can make it right. Just click purchase, and I'll forgive you." I stared at the message, unable to believe what I was reading. How did this suddenly become my responsibility? Jamie had turned her canceled trip into an excuse to guilt-trip me into buying things for her baby. I sat down, trying to think rationally. I had no obligation to pay for her irresponsibility. I didn't owe her anything. If Jamie really needed these things, why couldn't Daniel buy them? But she didn't stop there. When I didn't respond, Jamie sent another message. "Do you really think blocking me means you can escape this? I'm pregnant. And this entire situation has been so stressful for me. Are you seriously heartless enough to refuse to help a soon-to-be mother?" She was playing the victim again, something I had seen far too many times before. Every time she was denied something, she would turn herself into the victim, making me feel guilty and forcing me to take responsibility for her life choices. I didn't reply. I was exhausted. I did the only thing I could to protect my peace. I blocked her number. I thought this would finally be the end of it. That Jamie would realize I wasn't a never-ending source of money for her to exploit. But I had underestimated just how far she was willing to go. Because not long after, Daniel called me. I stared at my phone, but I didn't answer. I knew exactly what would happen if I picked up. Daniel would try to convince me, guilt-trip me, or worse, pressure me into giving Jamie what she wanted. After ignoring his call, I thought it was finally over. But then, at midnight, my doorbell rang. I walked to the door and opened it, and standing in front of me was Melanie. Jamie's 11-year-old daughter with a small suitcase beside her. No note, no message, no explanation. Jamie had abandoned her daughter on my doorstep. I stood frozen for a few seconds, completely in shock. Had she really just done this? I stood frozen at my front door, staring at Melanie, my 11-year-old niece, standing there with a small suitcase beside her. No Jamie, no Daniel, just her, alone, in the middle of the night. A flood of thoughts raced through my mind. Had Jamie really done this? What was she thinking, leaving her daughter like this? Was this some kind of twisted game? I wanted to believe there had been some kind of misunderstanding, that maybe Jamie had only dropped Melanie off for a short visit, but there was no text, no call, no explanation. Jamie had truly abandoned her child at my doorstep. I quickly pulled Melanie inside and shut the door. She looked worried and confused, but she was trying her best to stay calm. I crouched down to her level and asked gently, "Where's your mom? Why are you here this late?" Melanie lowered her gaze and mumbled, "Mom said you'd watch me. She told me to bring my stuff because I'll be staying with you for a while." I was stunned. Jamie had never asked me. She had never even mentioned this. She had simply decided on her own that I was going to take care of her daughter and dropped her off without warning. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm for Melanie's sake. "Did your mom say when she'd be back?" I asked. Melanie shook her head. That was it. That was my breaking point. Jamie had already pushed every boundary possible, from trying to manipulate me into paying for her trip, to bombarding me with guilt, to demanding that I fund her life. And now, when all else failed, she'd taken the ultimate step, dumping her child on me as a last-ditch attempt to force my hand. I checked my phone. No messages from Jamie. But when I checked my missed calls, I saw that Daniel had called me not long before this. Did he know what was happening? Had Jamie told him? I debated calling them back, but I knew exactly what would happen. Jamie would try to manipulate me again, twist the story, or turn herself into the victim. Still, I couldn't just leave things as they were. I turned back to Melanie, who was now curled up on the couch, eyes filled with uncertainty. "Are you hungry?" "I can get you something to eat," I offered. She nodded weakly. I headed to the kitchen, preparing a small snack for her, but my mind was racing with questions. Should I call the police? If I did, Jamie would be in serious trouble. She could be charged with child abandonment. That could have major consequences for Melanie, too. But if I did nothing, I was allowing Jamie to get away with this, giving her full control over my life yet again. I sat down, staring at Melanie's small suitcase, my mind a whirlwind of frustration, anger, and disbelief. I didn't know what Jamie thought she was doing, but one thing was certain. I couldn't let her keep taking advantage of me. The real question was, what was I going to do about it? I sat there watching Melanie curl up on the couch, nibbling on the small snack I had given her. She clearly didn't understand everything that was happening, but she was old enough to sense that something was wrong. I could see the worry, fear, and confusion in her eyes. A whirlwind of thoughts swirled in my mind. Should I call the police? If I did, Jamie would be in serious trouble. Dropping off her child in the middle of the night without my consent could be considered abandonment. That could lead to legal consequences for her. But if I involved the authorities, would Melanie suffer alongside her mother? And if I didn't call the police, if I went to Jamie's house to confront her instead, would that solve anything? Or would it just drag me back into her manipulative cycle all over again? I picked up my phone, about to call Jamie, but then I hesitated. I knew exactly what she would do: cry, apologize, twist the situation around, or worse, blame me for everything. I was too exhausted to deal with that. Instead, I typed a short, firm message. "Jamie, this is unacceptable. Come pick up Melanie immediately. If you don't get here within an hour, I'm calling the police." I sent it and put my phone down. I looked at Melanie. I didn't want her stuck in this mess, but I also couldn't let Jamie keep exploiting me. About 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Jamie had responded. "Are you serious? You would actually call the police just because I asked you to watch her for one night? You are so selfish and cruel. Do you even understand what I'm going through? I had no patience left for her manipulation. I simply replied, "You have 50 minutes. Then I didn't respond again. The minutes dragged by slowly. I kept checking on Melanie, who had started to relax a little, probably realizing that I wasn't mad at her. But I knew she was still scared. She had no idea what her mother was doing or why she'd been left at my doorstep like a burden. Then, at the 45-minute mark, there was a loud, angry knock at my door. I opened it to find Jamie standing there, her face flushed red with anger. "Are you really going to do this?" she snapped. I didn't argue. I simply looked her in the eye and said calmly, "I'm not letting you manipulate me anymore. If you ever try something like this again, I will call the police. You have gone way too far, Jamie." She bit her lip, unable to respond. Then, without another word, she grabbed Melanie's suitcase and stormed off with her daughter. As soon as the door shut behind them, I exhaled deeply. I had finally drawn a firm boundary. Jamie would think twice before trying to use me again. And most importantly, I was finally free from her control.